Donny D and Little Joan with a screenwriter's take on the Batman. The man. The Batman. Okay. Finally, I saw this movie and I beat the system. I already had HBO Max for free, so I didn't have to pay that extra dollar, Warner Brothers. So I just had to wait you out. Totally worth it. Um, Okay, so as normal, I'm going to give you my non-spoiler review, and then we'll go into some spoilers, sort of break it down in a screenwriter way. Non-spoiler review. It's pretty much what everybody's been saying. The movie is a little too long. Third act isn't. I wouldn't say the third act's bad. I would say that the third act isn't as good as Acts 1 and 2. Acts 1 and 2 move along great. Act 2 is the car chase is great. And then Act 3 kind of gets bogged down in luxuriating in all the payoffs, which aren't that big, and getting into a lot of, but wait, there's more. So ultimately, the reason I think the beginning of the movie is so strong is because it doesn't luxuriate at all. It gets right to the point, moves forward, says we got to do these things. By the third act, they've kind of gone back on that, and they're kind of like giving you a little too much of the relationship between Batman and Catwoman, which isn't that much of a relationship in my view. Really should just kind of move on. And his relationship with the city, which, again, isn't that big. But that being said, I didn't find the third act as long and as drawn out as I thought I would. I found, it just wasn't as like it was like Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, here it is, and little more, and there we go. I mean, there were like 5 endings to this movie. And funny enough, I saw the deleted scene, and that could have been in this movie. It really could have. And it probably should have been. If they had trimmed the fat towards the end, I think you could have easily fit that scene in. And I think it would have been a stronger ending. But, okay. So, overall, is this movie worth watching? Certainly a good rental. In a theater, I think 3 hours is pretty damn long for a movie. And if you got a soda at the beginning of this thing, you're screwed. But that being said, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Definitely a great first time out. Everything is right with the movie. It gets great tone. Great tone. Captures Batman. Robert Pattinson doesn't say much, which is great. Andy Serkis's Alfred is pretty good. Pretty good. He's a little more spry than the previous Alfreds, but I think they had good on-screen chemistry in that way, and I like the character arc here with Batman because, it's a younger Batman. He's learning, still learning, and he learned something at the end of this. I can hear the pitch, and the pitch is like Seven meets Batman, meets a couple other movies like that, and it really suits the subgenre of Batman, let's say. This works a lot better than I think Tim Burton's take on it, which was always a little too cutesy. Christopher Nolan's was okay, but I think this works better. This works better. And the best part about this movie, I could totally see you combining this with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. It had that kind of feel to it. Every scene had garbage strewn streets. I mean, Gotham is just a mess, and it's great. It combines a lot of stuff from the previous comics. It's got elements of the Long Halloween, elements of, I think there was a flood in Gotham in one story, but, or a natural disaster, I should say, not a flood. It combines a lot of stuff here. And the movie does a pretty good job of using Bruce Wayne's knowledge of the city. You feel like he's a guy who lives there and lives for the city. Some of the extra cast aren't as good as they could be. I do like Jeffrey Wright as Gordon. He's pretty good. I don't like the new mayor. She's a little too good, a little too cutesy. There was an undercurrent. There wasn't a strong amount of wokeness. It certainly didn't overwhelm the movie. They kept that in check, but there was an undercurrent of it. You had a couple of lines from Catwoman, which I didn't mind because Catwoman's kind of that way anyway. You could see her being that way, and she is a criminal, and you could see her being very lefty. That would fit in well with her character. It's just the movie's overall tone, like every corrupt character except Batman is, white ensconced male. So that was a little annoying, but they do a good job of combining the organized crime elements with the villains from the comic. And Colin Farrell steals the movie. I mean, he just steals the movie. His Penguin's great. It's not good. It's a great Penguin. This, to me, is how Penguin should be. If you're not gonna do, a Burgess Meredith kind of Penguin, if you're not gonna do really odd, weird Penguin, this is like a good Penguin because you can see this guy being the Penguin, at least when he starts out, and you could see it ramping up more and getting more super villainy, right? But the thing about Penguin, he's a smart character, and he's very crime oriented, so that works well within the subgenre here. The problem, I think, with previous movies is a little too campy, and this wasn't campy. Not campy at all. I mean, this combines some of the best elements with everything. So before I get into any spoilers, let me end the non-spoiler review here. So I would recommend it, especially if you're a Batman fan. I think you'll like it a lot. I had a friend who was like, no, I don't like Robert Pattinson as Batman. And he saw the movie, he loved it. So I think it's a solid entry. It's a good start to a new franchise. I think you can build on this a lot. So I just think you need to trim the fat a little bit, despite the fact I loved it. Now, I'm a little biased for Batman, so I didn't mind going this long. I didn't feel the pacing hurt it too much. It just was a little bit of, and let's get into the non-spoiler review, and I can get into the nitty-gritty here. Okay, so spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. It's on HBO Max now, and pretty good deal for HBO Max. If you got it, I got it for free with my phone, so I'm loving life because finally there was something on HBO Max I like. Okay, spoilers ahead. The Batman. All right, so Robert Pattinson is, I think he's rock solid in this. Now, he's not as large as maybe you'd imagine Bruce Wayne be, but he's got a good look in terms of, younger Batman, I think, and he's a good actor. I believed him in the role. His take on Bruce Wayne is a little bit more young in terms of like his stubbornness. I feel like it's got a good spin on it. Like he's like, F you, Alfred, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to fight crime. Basically, that's kind of his attitude. And he's a man of few words, which I also like. I mean, he wasn't chewing up the scenery here. He just said exactly what he needed to say, and that was it, And so I liked his moves. I thought his moves were good. They didn't spend a lot of time explaining the equipment, which I think was the main drawback if I had to nitpick on the Christopher Nolan Batmans. A little too much in the gadgets, a little too much into that, whereas this, it was just like, a lot of things just moved ahead because you already assumed it, right? We didn't have to see a retelling of the origin. Great. A+. We didn't have to see all the various gadgets explained. He had sort of the basic Batman gadgets. He had the grappling hook. He had a taser, which you could totally see. He had the armor. it was all good. It was all good. So first act, there's the murder of the mayor, and he's running for re-election, and Riddler kills him. Now, Riddler's a little more murderous than normal in the comics, but I mean, for the Seven sort of aspect of this, that worked. They made him kind of like a Seven-ish Zodiac killer guy. That all seemed to work pretty well. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And, although I hated seeing Eddie, kind of pushed into the murder role, but he kind of already got pushed there in the comics. So, but it worked well in the movies. He was an obsessive guy. He used the internet. And, what was really great in the movie was the portrayal of the city. You really felt the size and the scope of it. There was just so many people and places, and they had these big giant shots of the city. Loved them. Great. I mean, Matt Reeves absolutely nails the milieu. So yeah, you got the great setup. Gordon and Batman are already established as having some sort of working relationship, as Gordon being the only honest cop in the city. That's where it should be. That is exactly where we want to be. You got a main protagonist here, especially in a movie. Like, everything's against Batman and Gordon. Everything. Every cop in Gotham just about is crooked. They don't know who to trust. Even by the end of the movie, you kind of don't know who to trust. They're just so infinitely corrupt. Then you got Zoe Kravitz, who gets introduced as Catwoman. Now, for the most part, I liked her because, it wasn't a big... Again, it wasn't like a big showcase of Catwoman. It was just, she was Catwoman, right? She had a lot of cats. She had sort of it was just a very subtle kind of thing. They never say, I don't think they even say she's Catwoman, but she had all the weapons and gear. Most of it made sense. The whip, kind of not, but you could kind of forgive it. Their romance, I think they focus a little too much on their romance, but you can almost... Are you having a nightmare, Joan? I'm hearing a little beep, beep, beep. I'm hearing, the romance was a little much. I think, I understand why they put that in there. Bruce Wayne's character, he really did come off as too obsessive to have like a normal relationship, and he's coming off as a young guy. Pattinson's pretty young, so you could see him kind of being tempted by this, as opposed to one of the older actors, not so much, right? So that kind of all worked. I didn't mind it. Again, I didn't mind her sort of woke line in the middle of the movie. It didn't detract, because you could totally see Catwoman saying something like that. Whether or not she meant it, you don't know, because she is kind of a liar, kind of someone you can't trust, always out for herself kind of thing. So we get into Act 2. Act 2 to me blows away the other two acts. You got the car chase, huge. The car chase was beautiful. Everything about it was awesome, and then the climax, they get the Penguin, and Colin Farrell's take again was just spectacular. So that all ties in great. Of course, they're unraveling this mystery. There's reveal after reveal, and that's where it gets a little too much. It gets a little too much of a reveal. That's why they get into it. It's like, oh, the movie's not ending yet. And, after about 3 or 4 reveals, it starts to get a little numbing. It's like, okay, all right, one more. I did like, at the end, where the Riddler kind of gives himself up, that sort of was consistent with a character who was crazy, a character who was, in Batman's view, a serial killer, and he kind of was. So that all kind of makes sense. That there was a great scene where he questions the Riddler, and you think he knows he's Bruce Wayne, but then you realize he doesn't. And that's the other good thing about Pattinson not saying anything. So You can sort of see the wheels turning behind his eyes. You know Batman's too smart for that. He's worried. You know he's worried, but in the end, it's like, clever. He didn't expose himself. The deleted scene, of course, was with the Joker in Arkham and Batman questioning him. I think that scene should have been in there. I think he should have kept it. I think he should have cut some of the stuff at the end. The third act is just one reveal after another. After he assassinates Falcone, and you realize it was all one big setup so he could kill Falcone, bring him into the light, and then, okay, maybe the next one. Maybe the next one with the blowing up the seawall and flooding the city. Like, I'm not sure how that's revenge. I think his main revenge really was Falcone, and probably should have stopped there. Possibly with the joke Riddler getting away. And then, but there was no reason for him to get away, right? Once he gets his vengeance, it's like, well, what is he going to do next? The whole seawall thing, I don't know if that didn't really make all that much sense. It seemed to make sense that, you could argue, the ocean will wash away the filth in this city, that kind of crazy nonsense. I guess you could have it, but after that, after the incel brigade showed up at the end to shoot everybody, it was like, okay, this is an interesting twist. They've already captured the main villain, and his henchmen show up. So that was an interesting use of the whole henchman trope, right? It was like he programmed his henchmen online to set things off down the road. So then he gets caught, and then his henchmen do the dirty work. So it was a fun scene at the end. I didn't like that Catwoman kind of saves Batman towards the end. I thought that was an unnecessary scene, but it's offset a little bit by the fact that Zoe Kravitz's character doesn't really outfight too many people. Doesn't outfight men, which she shouldn't really. Even though she's Catwoman and she's got her moves, the only guy she really outfights is the guy who's by himself when she's like holding him hostage and gives him over to Batman and Gordon and almost kills him. So I didn't mind it too much. I was just like, okay, she's got to save him. And then there was that moment where Pattinson uses some sort of drug to revive himself. Is that the venom? Is that the venom juice at the end? I wonder. It could be a callback to that. I don't know, or a call forward to it. I guess. That kind of stuff was by that point almost unnecessary, right? But I did like the speech Pattinson gives as he's putting the girl in and giving her over to the chopper EMT to get her out of there. Like, that scene was important, I think, because that was a moment where he realizes, it's not enough for vengeance. You need to give people some hope. And that was kind of the theme of the movie. That was more important, I think, than showing yet another scene where somebody almost gets killed and Batman narrowly escapes. So I think you could have cut that. I think you could have cut a good chunk out of the final bit. Even when Batman leads people with a flare towards the end, that could have been quicker. That was a little, again, by that point the movie was luxuriating at a point in the movie where you did not need to luxuriate. You needed to move things along. At that point, just save people and then cut to the scene where people are being choppered out and then call it a day. And then, you do the final scene where in the graveyard with Batman and Catwoman, and they go their separate ways, which was fine, and he goes to fight another day. And I like that too. See, that's Reeves, the director, keeping a nice pace to it. This just doesn't stop. Batman's constantly fighting this war on crime, a one-man war on crime, and that was a good feeling. That's the tone that the book should have at all times, that he's all about fighting this crime. He's all about this crusade. He's probably never going to win. He's probably fighting it wrong, but this is the character. He fights on the street, and he's a vigilante. So overall, good stuff. You know, I think people were a little hard on the third act. I didn't think it was that. You know, even though it was too long, it wasn't. You know, the impression I got was like, oh man, it really dies in the third act. It doesn't. It just doesn't live up to the second act. You know, it's just first and second act are driving at this big thing, and then Riddler gives himself up at the end. So it needed a little more. It needed a little more, I think, dialogue about the whole idea of vengeance. So when he gives the speech, or the internal monologue, I should say, and the kid leaves in the chopper, we understand that, yeah, this is a big deal now. Batman's going to go forward. He's going to change a little bit. He's going to lighten it up. He can't just do this by himself if he's going to win this battle. He needs to get people on his side. And what I would expect to see in the next movie would be Bruce Wayne attempting to do that in some way, like, I don't know, starting a charity renewal. But I think the movie really should have ended on the Riddler meeting the Joker, right? That would have been a great ending. Them laughing it up, and you get the sense, oh, these two nutbags, they're going to be back in the sequel, and it's going to be crazy. Like, that's what we needed for an ending. That would have been solid ending, credits. But yeah, I think it would have been good to show the Joker about midway through the movie, Batman, the questioning of him, and knowing that, and the implication could be something like, the Joker will never get out because he doesn't have any allies, right? He doesn't have any allies. Nobody wants to help that guy because, he kills his own henchmen all the time. So then, at the end of the movie, where he meets the Riddler, you realize, uh-oh, this is the kind of guy, number one, the Joker's going to manipulate, because the Joker's maybe a little more evil, a little smarter, in terms of manipulating people than the Riddler is, because the Riddler in this movie he's just a little too vulnerable, right? Especially in that moment. And so the implication could be that because the Joker finally finds an ally, and a really capable one, that he's going to be able to get out of Arkham somehow, because Riddler is obviously very capable. Right? He did all these crazy things during the course of the movie. He did the whole bomb thing, and so I think that's probably would have been my editing correction as a screenwriter. That's where I would have, I think, fixed the movie, so it would have ended on a higher point, and not on Catwoman and Batwoman just going their separate ways, which Catwoman ultimately is not that important in the movie. She's just not. I did like the connection with her and Falcone. That worked very well. It made it more personal. It gave her a reason to be in the mix constantly. John Turturro was great as Falcone, evil, manipulative. I liked the moment where, Bruce, for a moment, buys Falcone's lies because he really sells that moment. And then when he confronts Alfred, it's like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. You've been lied to. And he kind of has that weak moment, and his father did go to Falcone, but it wasn't that Falcone, wasn't that his father was a bad guy, and Falcone kind of has him almost convinced of that. And that was a good tie. Again, it was all a good tie-in. It was great how people knew who Bruce Wayne was, but they didn't know he was Batman. You didn't have to get into that. You didn't have to get into the big clunky Batman tropes that the comic sometimes dips into that don't help it. It just doesn't help it. So what would I like to see going forward? Well, obviously they're queuing up the Joker and the Riddler. I could see, a start to the movie where the Joker uses the Riddler to escape and then like screws him, leaves him behind in Arkham. Um, or maybe not. Maybe we move on to one of the other rogues galleries and save Joker for movie 3, which would also be a great move, right? Because then you could be like, oh, we were going to see the Joker. Oh, there's the Joker. Ah, it's not going to be this movie. There's still plenty of rogues to go through. A couple people pitched Calendar Man the other day. Calendar Man is not on the top of the list. Okay, just forget about Calendar Man. At best, Calendar Man is like, a side character who, in the beginning of the movie, Batman pummels, and then the movie actually starts. So you got the Scarecrow. Scarecrow's fun. I think for a movie like this, you need to pick a guy who's going to be almost a normal criminal, because that's the kind of look we're going for here. So maybe Killer Croc, maybe, the way Killer Croc was initially introduced, he wasn't a guy who had superpowers at all. Beyond that, who else could you do? Oh, Harley Quinn, no. Please no Harley Quinn. Sick of Harley Quinn. Maybe you could do Black Mask, but I don't know. Black Mask kind of ruined in the Harley Quinn movie. Never a great character. Maybe the ventriloquist. He is nuts. There are a bunch of them. Who else? Zaz was always interesting, as a serial killer. I mean, you could have used Zaz for this movie, really. Zaz was, again, though, he's not a main guy. It's Joker, it's Riddler, it's maybe Mr. Freeze, maybe. Mr. Freeze a little too sci-fi, I think, for this kind of take. Two-Face, of course. Two-Face would be good. Two-Face would be a good next one. Now, they didn't tee up Two-Face, but I think they were trying to stay away from Two-Face. I think Riddler was a good choice, right? He stayed away from the Christopher Nolan ones, and the ones that have sort of been done to death. You tease the Joker. Next one, yeah, so it's either Two-Face or Joker, I think, are probably at the top of the list. Definitely bring Penguin back. I mean, Colin Farrell was just... that makeup job was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal. Or did they CGI it, or part of both? He just doesn't look like himself. Really. And he's a weird kind of like gangstery Penguin, right? He's a little more gangster than Penguin normally is, but I think it really worked well in the movie. And he was very much a tough guy, and you could see that. Again, that car chase. I love a good car chase, and that was a fun one. Just absolute chaos. It just constantly rained in this movie too, which was a big help. So, going forward, Scarecrow. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want it to get too superhero-y, though. I like this take on it, where it's just barely superhero. Mainly he's the superhero. Because, once you start to sort of cross that Rubicon, then it's going to get very, Bane. Bane I could completely do without. Never liked Bane. Always thought Bane was a weak character. When you got Tom Hardy playing him, he almost made it work in the Christopher Nolan movie, but quite frankly, I could do without Bane. No Bane, please. Just cross him off your list. He was never an interesting character to me. The only interesting part of Bane was what he accomplished, which, in my view, he hadn't earned that right. He hadn't earned the right to accomplish so much as a supervillain against the man, the Batman. He's a late in the game character, never a solid rogues gallery character. There are a bunch of other ones. Clayface would be good, but again, then you're getting in the realm of like sci-fi. But Clayface, if you did Clayface on a very sort of subtle level if he started Clayface when he could just change his face, right? So just a guy who can essentially change his face and is a good actor and his mannerisms, and he gets worse and worse and worse, but that could be a dangerous cat. I don't know. Maybe a team of guys. I'm not too big on the Court of Owls. Nah. I mean, it's okay. It's not great. Ra's al Ghul, of course. Ra's is pretty good. I don't know. I don't think they're going to go in that direction, but we'll see. We'll see. But overall, I think well written. Dialogue was great, crisp. Again, if you just trim the fat off I think you could have trimmed an easy 15, 20 minutes off the third act, and nobody would have missed it. And then you would have had plenty of room for that Joker scene somewhere in the middle. And then I think if you had ended with Riddler and the Joker meeting at the end, that would have been a great ending. You know, just swing the camera off into this glaring sun that's poking through their cell doors as they're laughing, or cut to the outside of Arkham. Throw end credits. End credits. Maybe I'm crazy. So anyhow, watch Batman, the Man, the Batman on HBO Max. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check us out, on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble. And we'll see you tomorrow.